This is Attack of the 20th Century. Thank you for joining us as we explore science fiction, fantasy, and horror films of the 20th century. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm your other host, Kim.
Welcome to episode 44. We are reviewing 1977's Orca, directed by Michael Anderson and produced by Dino De Laurentiis. And this kicks off our new Summer Swim series.
Woo!
Look for us on Instagram and Facebook at Attack of the 20th Century. That's 20th. We post our next movie selection there. You can comment, give your thoughts, and they just might make it on the air. We also have an announcement this week that you can send us emails if you send it to attackofthe20thcentury at outlook.com.
Okay.
And also, we set up a YouTube page.
Uh-oh.
And the video, there are no real videos. It's
Okay.
still the audio podcast, but we have a picture up.
So you can listen to our podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, I did a survey on Instagram and just asked, do any of you only listen to podcasts on YouTube?
That's the thing. People do.
And a third of our voters said that that's what they use.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I was like, okay.
So they can listen to it on YouTube now.
Yeah.
They are not seeing us.
They're not seeing us, but they can listen to us on the video site, YouTube.
Okay.
Look up on YouTube, Attack of the 20th Century, and it will show up as an option that you could subscribe to. Now, we don't really have any subscribers yet because I just set it up yesterday.
Oh, okay. It's brand new.
Brand new.
It's a fresh baby YouTube.
So listen to us on YouTube if you'd like. And if you want to send us email, again, attackofthe20thcentury at outlook.com.
Awesome.
So what have you been watching lately?
Well, I think this summer's theme for me has been travel. So I really haven't been in a place to watch a lot of stuff. I was gone with our youth group as a chaperone last week, but I did come home and start trying to wrap up the final season of Endeavour PBS. I know, shocker, I'm watching a PBS show. A PBS crime drama, no less.
Yeah.
A British crime drama, no less.
That's your jam.
That is my jam, and this is the final season of Endeavour, which is like a prequel that PBS started making a few years back that covers the early detecting life of Endeavour Morse, which later becomes the 20-something season Inspector Morse show that the BBC produced forever and ever that I loved. It's like, you know, through the 80s and 90s. So PBS took it upon themselves, and Masterpiece Mysteries created the prequel to kind of show the young life of Detective Morse as he's coming through the ranks. And Sean Evans has been playing him for these however many seasons. He's phenomenal. I love his relationship with Roger Allam, who's like his superior officer.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get caught up on that. There's one episode left for me to watch, and so I'm trying really hard not to be on the interwebs and getting spoilers.
Okay.
I want to see how it wraps up. Yep. So that's the only thing I've had time to watch.
Okay.
In between travels.
Gotcha. Well, while you were out, me and the boys met up with a group of my friends that went and saw The Flash.
Oh, yeah, the new one.
The new one, just released this year. A few pros I'll throw out there first because I don't want to sound like I'm trashing it. Ezra Miller, I know he must be a terrible human being just based on some videos I've seen.
Oh, really?
I don't keep up with this stuff, but I have just seen on Instagram him like strangling this woman, like bringing her down to the ground, strangling her.
Like in real life?
Like a physical altercation, yes.
Was this like in a Walmart?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know. The little I saw, she thought they were teasing. She kept talking about like, how can he be a superhero? She could take him, that kind of thing.
Oh, no.
And I guess she provoked him, and then he laid forth his physical wrath upon her neck.
Oh, my gosh. Wow. That's disappointing to hear.
He's been in other legal trouble. I know one of the reasons why The Flash hasn't performed well, they've chalked up to their main star, hasn't been able to do promotional shows. And
because he's in trouble with the law?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
But in the movie, he really is good.
Really?
And there's like two of him. It involves time travel, so this isn't a spoiler by any means.
Right.
And they have like kind of a multiverse thing going on.
Yeah, I thought I'd read somewhere or heard somewhere they were going for a multiverse thing.
But he does comedy with himself really, really well.
Huh.
And you just think like that's got to be so hard to do.
Yeah.
Like, how did they even manage that? Because it's just that timing, the comedic timing, playing off of each other, just have this great energy between the two of them. And I'm like, how did they even accomplish that?
Yeah, that's interesting. So plays well with himself, but not well with others.
Apparently. The other part that I really enjoyed are the nostalgic elements.
Okay.
I grew up as a DC kid. Batman was everything as we were growing up, and Superman. And,
Right.
And so because it's a multiverse, and this isn't a spoiler either, they have Michael Keaton. It's kind of
That's
the head
right.
Batman in it.
Yeah.
And you really get to see him kick butt. He's in a lot of physical action. So a lot of things that you couldn't have seen before, like they're able to do now with modern technology. But it's kind of a celebration of all these past film and TV stars from DC. So you get, like Christopher Reeves makes an appearance.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa,
Yeah.
Freaky.
So it's cool. It's also, you got to see some of the characters from the Snyderverse.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So if you're into all the nostalgic elements, that's there for you, which I think was pretty cool.
Okay.
The reason why he's trying to do this time travel, like most superheroes, they have tragic backstories.
Yes.
So he's trying to undo his tragic backstory.
Uh-oh.
And of course, you
That
don't
can't
meddle.
go well. Yeah.
You don't meddle with time, right?
Even I know the butterfly effect.
Exactly. So there's a lot of that, but it was really sweet to see him interact in those small moments with his mom and his dad from the past, and he kind of knows what's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of that kind of emotional heartstring pulling, which is really good. So all of that's really good stuff. Just in general, as far as the cons, I'm really kind of tired of the world being in jeopardy all the time.
Right. Yes.
Like, we say superhero fatigue, but a lot of it, I think, is just like, how many times can we save planet Earth?
Right.
But, for 10 or 15 years now, we've seen superheroes like punch each other in the face, fly through buildings, like destroy cities.
Yeah, like whole cities crumbling around them.
And it does almost no damage to the person that they're beating up.
Right.
People hardly die, like, that are superheroes.
Yeah.
And if they do, and they have this big scene, like they undo it 20 minutes later, or they undo it, with the next movie.
Yeah.
With all these time travel elements, like they can go back and ask that person that you saw die for advice later.
Yeah. It's always bothered me, like, when there's just so much collateral damage. Like, we never think about the human toll in these superhero movies. Like, whole cities are crumbling. Like, did we not all live through 9/11? We know what happens when buildings crumble in large cities. Yeah. It's not good.
It's not a
Why
good thing.
is that never... Not that... I mean, obviously, that would change the whole tone of a superhero movie if we had to wrestle with that. But it does bother me that just happens, and we're like, okay, suspension of disbelief. Moving on.
Yeah, and I'm not going to get into Shazam too, but I did see that one too. And one of the supervillains, kind of, she's on the fence, I guess.
Oh.
She can kind of do like this Inception thing, where she can move buildings around, like she waves her arms around, and it's kind of like Doctor Strange-ish.
Yeah,
the buildings are physically
like Doctor Strange.
They're moving all over the place, and I'm thinking like, what does that do to that building? Like, you just move skyscrapers.
Right.
Like
there's
30
a reason
feet.
we put foundations a third, the height of the building deep into the earth, or whatever it is, whatever the rules are.
Yeah. So I guess it's just a little tiresome. There's no consequences, and sometimes when these action sequences go on for 20 minutes straight, my brain starts shutting off. I just feel like I'm watching a video game, like I'm watching video game violence.
Right.
Because it's practically, these superhero movies are all animated films now.
Yeah, basically, that's what
That's what
watching.
they are.
Yeah.
It was fun. It's kind of disposable entertainment.
Sure.
I don't know, long term. Like, it doesn't stick with you, I don't think.
Right.
There's nothing really important
Can
happening.
I throw in a concept? I know you and I have talked about this a little bit recently. There's a book that I'm wanting to read that I haven't read by Joshua Gibbs. If you don't know who that is, you'll want to look him up. Very thoughtful guy. He's from the classical education movement, so hence why I know about him. But he has his new book talks about things that are common, uncommon, and mediocre. And per his definition, I've heard him in interviews. Again, I haven't read his book yet, but basically there's the things that are common, like they're good. Like it was entertainment, it lasted, and it could be movie, music, song, book, writing, poetry, whatever. Like, it was good in the moment, and maybe it has some staying power. People will talk about it for a year or two or 5 or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you have things that are uncommon, which are like what am I trying to think of? Give me something that's
The Matrix or...
I don't know. Does Matrix count as uncommon? I feel like that's a little young. I'm thinking of things like To Kill a Mockingbird or Beethoven's Fifth. These are uncommon. Like, they're so good that we're still talking about them hundreds of years or decades later. Like, they're still part of the bigger conversation. And then there's the mediocre, the things that are the flash in the pan.
Yeah.
Like, everybody's like... I don't even, because I don't keep up with these things. I'm sure there's like a song of the summer. I know a couple summers ago, what was that? Was it Despacito or something? Like every time you went to the beach, everybody on the beach is playing that song from their boombox.
Yeah.
And now no one even knows what that, it's like gone. It was like the song for the moment and now it's gone.
It scratched an itch and it's gone.
That's like mediocre. So it's made me... Again, haven't read the book, but I've discussed these concepts and heard Joshua Gibbs discuss these concepts. So now it's like in my head when I hear you talk about a movie like that, I'm like, okay, so is this common, uncommon, mediocre? Sounds pretty harsh to say, it's mediocre.
Yeah.
But like, are we still going to be talking about the 2023 Flash movie come next summer?
No.
My guess is probably not from your telling of it.
No. I think it was great. Guys' night out. Got to see a movie with my boys.
Right.
We all came out. We had laughs. Wasn't it cool when Michael Keaton was doing this or that?
Right.
But yeah, it's not an important film by any means.
Right.
And it served a purpose for an evening.
Well, that's fun. This episode kicks off our Summer Swim series where we will be looking at movies that deal with the terrors of the deep. So, things like sharks and whales and, gators, piranhas, you name it, we'll probably talk about it sometime this summer. So thanks for joining us on our Summer Swim. Okay, this is your spoiler warning. We will probably spoil this movie for you if you have not seen it yet. So hit pause and come join us later if you want to watch it first. All right, we are talking about Orca from 1977, and Rotten Tomatoes was not kind. It gets a 9% critic score and a 33% audience score, which is only marginally better.
Yeah. Ugh.
And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I don't think it was I don't think it was a flop financially, but it was kind of on the heels of Jaws, maybe 2 years later.
Right.
And did not rake in the box office numbers that Jaws brought in.
Yeah, I know the producer, Dino De Laurentiis, was extremely upset that they couldn't outdo Jaws.
Oh, well, it's Jaws.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and tell us a little bit about the film.
Do it.
So the film opens up with a pair of orcas expressing their love and affections to one another.
It felt a little intimate, but I've never felt quite so intimate with orcas before, or any marine mammal.
Captain Nolan, played by Richard Harris, and his crew are attempting to capture a great white shark in the waters of Nova Scotia before witnessing an orca save the life of a diver by ramming into a 25-foot shark, knocking it out of the water and making it scream in pain with blood coming out of its mouth. I think this was clearly, hey, my fish is better than your fish, Jaws.
Yeah, it was a direct stab at Jaws. And apparently that poor shark had internal injuries. I'm not sure why it was bleeding out of its mouth, but okay.
This inspires Captain Nolan to set his sights on capturing an orca instead. We then cut to Rachel Bedford, played by Charlotte Rampling, teaching a class, providing an exorbitant amount of exposition about the nature of orcas, including the feelings they have of revenge. They're the most intelligent animal on the earth. They're capable of transmitting 5 million pieces of information in a few whale shrieks. So I think you're going to talk about this in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of their orca information later.
Yeah. Rachel also advises the captain to don't try to capture one of these guys. You're going to end up butchering the animal. It's going to be terrible. And she ends up foreshadowing what's to come.
Right.
Easily the most difficult scene to watch is the captain unintentionally causes the death of a pregnant female orca. As he's hoisting her up on his boat, she miscarries her young one on the deck of the boat.
Yes. So that was
rough. While the body's being hoisted up, her mate watches and memorizes the face of the captain, almost like he's taking pictures of his face.
Literally, we zoom into his eyeball that has the captain's like silhouette in the iris.
Yes. All that was missing was a click, click.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the captain struggles with this misfortune. He goes to a local clergyman. He asks, can a man sin against an animal? We learn that the captain lost his pregnant wife in a car crash years earlier. So this crime against the Orca family kind of strikes him to the core.
Yeah.
The male Orca starts his revenge plot. He sinks some local fishermen boats. Mm-hmm. He destroys the captain's house. He eats the leg of one of his crew members, played by Bo Derek.
Yep.
The Orca breaks a gas line in one attack, which reaches a lantern, causing a series of explosions inside this whole fishing village.
Yes.
So we deduce that the Orca is challenging the captain to come meet him in the water, which the captain eventually agrees to do.
Right.
At this point, the town would not have it any other way. They're pretty upset with him.
You get out of here. You've screwed everything up for us.
Yeah, they make a living fishing, and they don't want this whale going around eating their fish,
right,
sinking their boats, blowing up their buildings.
Town. Yeah, seems bad.
Pretty bad for business. So then in the final 25 minutes, we see the captain follow the Orca into northerly waters while the Orca picks off the captain's crew one by one. Mm-hmm. In the film's climax, the Orca shoves an iceberg into the side of the captain's boat, causing the final two passengers, which is the captain and Rachel, to abandon the ship and jump onto a sheet of ice. The Orca continues to attack until the captain falls into the icy waters, leaving him very vulnerable.
Yes.
At this point, we know he's going to be dead anyway.
Yeah, he cannot survive this.
The Orca uses his tail to jettison the captain out of the water into a block of ice, causing him internal damage, and the captain is dead on impact, and his body slips off into the water. Rachel, who's now dressed for a Star Wars film,
yes,
is left alone on a sheet of ice while the satisfied Orca swims off with some really sappy music again.
And we have we think there's help coming for Rachel, right?
Yeah, I think they radioed right before.
She is not dressed for surviving on an iceberg. I can tell you that.
She's more in desert garb.
Yeah, she looks like, she's going to be on Tatooine soon.
She does.
It's weird.
So there you have it. So this film was directed by Michael Anderson. He did the epic Around the World in 80 Days, which we've seen from 56.
Yeah.
And then the dystopian sci-fi film Logan's Run from 1976,
right,
which we'll have to do one day. I mentioned the producer a couple times. His production company has a ton of notable credits, including King Kong, the Conan films, Red Sonja, which we did a year or so ago, Flash Gordon, and the Evil Dead trilogy, which we started our season with. Yep.
Did I know that?
You know it now.
I know it now. That's crazy.
This film also marks the debut of Bo Derek.
Oh, this is pre-Bo Derek in cornrows.
Yes.
Which are braids.
Yes. I don't know if she's quite a 10 yet.
Yeah. She hasn't made it to 10 status.
She looks cute, though. Young, cute.
Yeah, she's young, cute. I don't know how she landed a job on a shark hunting vessel, but
yeah,
that's what she's doing with her life in this movie.
Did. She paid for it with her leg.
Yeah, she did pay for it.
It's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
This film talks a lot about orcas and the science behind them, and it inspired us to do a little bit of research.
That is correct.
So today we are debuting a new segment called Research Corner.
Yes, welcome to Research Corner with Kim. So, I get it. Sci-fi, fantasy movies, and horror movies usually have a pretty fantastical element to them, right? But when you take a movie like this that deals with a real life thing, in this case, an orca, my science radar goes off when I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds like bad information. So the funny thing is, orcas have actually been in the news recently. I mean, we live in Florida. We have SeaWorld. SeaWorld's been in the news for years now.
For the wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons, and their treatment of orcas, and then how that doesn't pan out well for the humans that work with the orcas, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. But there's now, currently, since 2020, there's a weird orca phenomena happening off of like the Iberian Peninsula. So if you haven't seen that in the news, that's something you might want to check out. There's like this increased... I hesitate to call them orca attacks. Some headlines will call them that. But the researchers seem to be really maybe conflicted about what to call them because orcas, contrary to this film, don't actually normally have a revenge instinct. Revenge is something that's very human.
Right.
It's fight or flight and survival instinct in the animal world. So they don't think that these orcas off of the Iberian Peninsula are like getting revenge, but they have been messing up some sailboats.
Yeah, they have.
Since 2020. And we've had recent attacks just in the last month even. It's usually sailboats and racing boats. Some of them have been encircled by like 7 or 8 orcas. And then the orcas then headbutting the boat. Some of the boats have been sunk. A lot of rudders have been broken in the process. So it's kind of, maybe there's going to be some spin-off movies now because we have this kind of recent phenomena. But it's pretty weird. And the orca specialists that I've read, I'm sure there's people all over the map here, but it seems to be that they think they're playing.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking about an animal, I mean, they can live a pretty long time. So even one that's like 4 or 5 years old is still kind of an adolescent orca. And they play, and that involves like a 3-ton animal using its head to bump things around. So what looks like this orca's ramming my boat to me could just be this orca's like bored and like, hey, there's a thing to poke around in the ocean.
Yeah.
Who knows?
I saw one boat in particular. They were like stomping and hitting the boat, trying to like scare off the orca.
Good luck with that.
And all it did was like, hey, this is playtime. And a group of orcas started pummeling the boat.
Yeah, they're like, ooh. Okay, so in my research, I find that, so in the movie, Rachel, our marine biologist, claims that orcas can transmit, like 5 million pieces of information with a few little whale squeaks or whatever. But according to what I'm finding on the internet, orcas do communicate with one another. They have everybody's heard the recordings of like whale songs. So they have these like squeaky noises they make. And they have a form of echolocation, which is like it's clicks. It's like a series of clicks. It's the same thing bats do. And they often are found in deep, murky waters. And they do have good eyesight, but nobody has good eyesight in dark, murky waters. So they have to use some other form of like figuring out where icebergs are and where prey is and where larger things are like boats and whatever. So they use echolocation and they make these clicking noises and they send them out and they bounce back. Those clicks bounce back to them off of the objects in the water that they can't see. And then they have to interpret that data basically and like use it to steer themselves.
Yeah.
So I can just imagine someone beating on the side of a boat, it's sending them like echolocation clicks. So who knows if they're like, oh, I don't know, we're communicating. I don't know what they're thinking, but I don't think someone's tapping out the signal for them to attack.
Yeah.
On the side of a boat. So it was really cool. I mean, orcas do communicate. It looks like, so apparently there's resident orcas that live together in pods or like a herd, and they communicate more. They make more sounds than these transient orcas that kind of live by themselves. So there's differences, but if you live in the same pod, you kind of make the same sounds. Basically, you speak the same language.
Yeah.
Then another pod, it's almost like a fingerprint. Researchers can listen to, a 60-second recording of this pod and pick up on the sounds they're making and identify them as like, oh, that's L pod we've been following, but then they can listen to this other pod of orcas and hear their specific sounds and identify them by their sounds. So it's almost like the fingerprint of the orca pod.
That reminds me of beehives, right? Beehives.
Yeah.
So if you can get stung by one bee and that sends a signal to the whole hive, hey, sting the heck out of this guy.
Right.
He's bad. But then you can go to another beehive and they don't recognize those bee stings.
I think that's a pheromone thing, right?
Yeah.
That they put off. Yeah, that's true. So they're smart animals and they're equipped with some really cool ways to communicate and survive and thrive. Are they vengeful and plotting? I don't know that that's a real thing, but it makes for an interesting story.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, what about the one mate for life aspect?
Oh, yeah. That's another claim the movie makes is that they're monogamous. That does not hold any water, no pun intended. Every site that I searched, they're polygamous. And in fact,
Free love.
Yeah, free love. One female can mate with multiple mates in the same breeding cycle even. Yeah, and there was another thing that they shoot one of the orcas with a tranquilizer. Basically, that doesn't work. But all of them basically only sleep with half of their brain. So if you were to shoot them, because we breathe involuntarily, as long as we're alive, our body just breathes for us. We don't have to think about breathing. Aquatic mammals don't have that luxury. It's voluntary breathing. So that whole, when you see them come up and spout out of their blowhole, they've made a conscious decision, oh, it's time to breathe now. We have to go do that. So if their whole brain went to sleep and they're subconscious, they would drown. They would not come up for air. So when they sleep, and I found out chickens do this too, which is crazy to think about since we have chickens on the property. They literally, it's kind of like sleeping with one eye open. Half of their brain goes to sleep at a time, and the other half stays awake and conscious so that they can think, okay, it's time to go get some air now.
Wow.
And chickens do the same thing, sleep with one eye open, basically.
That's fascinating.
Interesting stuff.
Well, thank you for the research corner for today.
Yes.
Yay.
Join me next time in Research Corner.
All right, now let's get into when we first saw this film. So why don't I go ahead and start? You think about it.
All right.
I remember as a kid seeing the very end scene with Richard Harris against the orca.
Okay.
Now, I don't remember what happened. I just know that I have this memory of flipping through the channels. Must have been TBS, TNT, one of these Saturday afternoon type situations.
Right.
Then we watched it as a family a few years ago. You may have been there.
I was going to say,
physically.
when you say we, I don't know that I was conscious. My whole brain was asleep for that if I was in the room.
You didn't sleep with one eye open?
I did not.
That was the first time I saw the whole movie. And then when we were thinking of this new, what are we calling it? The
Summer Swim series?
The Summer Swim series. This one came up, why don't we do this film? So we watched it again this week.
Yes.
When did you first see it?
That I recollect?
Yes.
Just this week. Apparently, I may or may not have been in the room when you watched it a few years ago with the kids, but I have no recollection of that, which means there's a good chance I was asleep, whole brain asleep through that. But yeah, so this was my first time. I definitely remember hearing of this movie, but once we started watching it, nothing came back to me.
Right.
So I think this was my first actual time watching the movie.
Yeah, I think a big knock on this film is the comparison to Jaws.
Well, sure.
And it came out 2 years later. They obviously didn't shy away from it. The soundtrack even has some elements of Jaws, kind of that dun dun.
Yeah.
They don't do the exact theme, but they kind of play with that a little bit. And they even have it attacking a shark.
Right. At the very beginning.
Right at the beginning.
It's like, Jaws, take this.
Take this. But really, this has more in common with Moby Dick.
Yeah, actually, I read a review where it wasn't a nice review, but basically they were claiming this was more of a mashup of Moby Dick, King Kong, and Death Wish with Charles Bronson, which I think was also a De Laurentiis movie.
Probably.
But it's a revenge story. Mm-hmm. So it was more that than Jaws.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's time for us to go into our standouts and setbacks.
Okay.
So, do you have any standouts for us?
I do. I think the effects are standouts. Clearly, there's got to be footage used here from natural. I don't know if it's from National Geographic or what, but we're seeing actual live footage of killer whales, orcas swimming. And I know this because I've learned about the flaccid fin effect. So apparently orcas that are in captivity, they always develop, because they're never in deep enough water, no matter how big of an aquarium you can build for them. They're never in deep enough water to produce the kind of pressure that supports their dorsal fins in the way that God intended. So they develop a flaccid dorsal fin, which basically, if you've ever seen pictures of Shamu or whoever else, SeaWorld or whoever, that dorsal fin that sticks out of the water kind of tips over to the side. It's flaccid. It's kind of droopy. Whereas we're definitely seeing footage of real orcas in the ocean with erect dorsal fins that are standing up like they should in the wild. Now there is footage of trained orcas in the movie where that they're using the trained orcas because you see that kind of flopped over dorsal fin. Right. But still, they're using a lot of good footage of real animals, and the artificial whales that they had to use were made out of some kind of rubber that I guess rubber makes sense for a killer whale, an orca skin, it just looks right. You know, their skin is that very smooth, kind of sleek, shiny look. And so their models were really lifelike. In fact, they were so lifelike that animal rights activists blocked the trucks delivering the animatronic whales to the movie set because they thought they were the real thing. Like they looked real. And I will say they're convincing enough in the movie that you are disturbed, especially that first scene where the mom is dying and the baby's being lost and all of that was pretty traumatic to watch because it looked like, I'm like, how are they filming? Like, this looks like a real whale. Like, are they harming whales to film this movie? Like, what's happening in 1977?
We actually said that while we were watching the movie.
Yeah.
We were like, did they really kill a whale for this
I know.
thing?
I'm like, certainly they couldn't have gotten away with that, right? So, turns out they just had really good animatronics.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
Another standout I'll throw out is to Richard Harris, our first Dumbledore, if you remember, for the
That's right.
first couple films. Of all the characters, I think he's a little more well-rounded than the others. Mm-hmm. They actually attempted to show this good... He's basically overall a good guy, but a flawed character. He's got a lot of emotional baggage going on. He puts on this big, electric, dynamic personality when he's doing his hunt. You know, I think to get jazzed up. And he's the captain of a crew, so he has to kind of be the leader.
Right. Alpha male, personality.
And then he's got to deal with crap from the townspeople, you know, wanting him to leave, or maybe they're superstitious. And so he's got to be a little tough every now and then.
Sure.
But then he shows his signs of vulnerability when he's talking to the priest.
Yeah.
And he's asking basically, can a man sin against an animal?
Like, how badly have I screwed up?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have I basically damned my soul because, you know, I've murdered? Mm-hmm. Which I thought was, at that point, it was a pivotal point in the movie when he went from being kind of one-dimensional to, okay, well, he's got this other side.
Well, that's when we learned, wasn't it the first time we learned about, like, his past, too? Like, he had a wife and child that he lost.
Right,
and now he's caused the death of a mother and a child whale.
Yeah.
Or Orca.
Correct.
So, yeah, a lot gets revealed in that whole priest church scene.
Yeah. So he's struggling. He's a broken human. You know, you get to see all aspects of him, basically.
Yeah.
So I think of all the characters in this film, you know, other than the orca,
right,
you're kind of seeing a fully fleshed out character.
Yeah.
And I think his performance, like, he does a good job.
Yeah.
He's a good actor. Another standout I'll throw out is, just in general, I think it's commendable that they subvert expectations.
Okay.
If you're going to maybe go for the Jaws market, they could have done something with a horrible monster out there and these people that you care about. They did something different. They said, you're going to care about the plight of this orca.
Right. There's a reason to cheer for the orca.
We're going to cheer for the orca in this movie. And there's really no good guys to cheer for. It's not a Chief Brody situation.
No.
Where, you know, you want to see him win. You want to see him defeat the shark and save the day and
make this friendship. What was it, Amityville?
Yeah.
I translated it from Latin. Make the town safe again, basically.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not caring about that really in this movie.
No, you don't really care too much about the town just because the way they treated Harris.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll get to setbacks in a moment, but the captain has to pay for his sins.
Yeah.
And they made this clear, like, and he sees it. Like, he's wronged this animal, and he's got to face the music.
Yeah.
And the orca is not blameless either. You know, he's going and blowing up the town, committing arson.
Yeah, against the whole town when it was really one guy that caused his heartbreak. He's unleashing his terror on an entire fishing village.
Yeah. You know, and when Bo Derek, she's got an injured foot.
Right.
And he attacks her home, or their home.
Right.
And she starts falling into his mouth, and she gets her leg bitten off by the shark. Mm-hmm. You know, it's
not a shark.
It's a killer whale. Yeah, sorry. Whoops. But the orca's not blameless in this situation.
No,
It's not like you're just all in on the orca.
Right.
So anyway,
he turns into Rage Monster. That just made me think of our youngest likes to watch Dude Perfect.
Oh yeah.
And the one guy on Dude Perfect always does the Rage Monster bit. Yeah, the orca was like the Rage Monster. He just took it out on everybody.
What I love too is, like, when the town's blowing up, he comes out of the water. And, of course, they have sort of a natural smile anyway.
They have happy faces.
They have big, happy faces.
I mean, they have scary teeth when they open their mouth, but they do have happy faces.
So half his body's out of the water, just enjoying the view of what he's done.
It's like, yeah, that's right.
There are those moments. But let's roll into our setbacks.
Sure.
Because it really dovetails off of that standout. Mm-hmm. Because there's no one to cheer for, you're not fully invested in the Orca or Harris.
No.
You feel a little empty after watching this film.
Yeah, I agree. It's just like mutual destruction kind of at the end. I mean, the Orca, I guess, swims away pretty much unscathed.
Yeah.
But still, it's like...
But he's emotionally scarred, right? His woman and baby got killed. And so I observed this. This is a revenge story. And I guess this is accurate for a lot of revenge stories.
Yeah.
You know, you see somebody pursuing the person who wronged them. They kill him usually.
Yeah.
And there's an emptiness to it.
It's not as fulfilling as you think it's going to be.
Yeah. I think it's a setback for the film because you don't feel connected enough to really root for anybody. And when the film's over, I think you're sitting there like, okay, I watched this movie and it happened, but I don't feel jazzed up. I don't feel too bummed. I'm not affected emotionally all that much.
No.
I observed a series of events that happened before me.
I observed a broken man and a really angry fish. Not a fish, but you know what I mean.
Right.
So my setback, probably the biggest one for me, is there's no investment in any of the side characters. You talked about Richard Harris being a pretty well-rounded character. He's pretty fleshed out, but I feel like they gave him all of the jobs in this. I mean, it's him and the fish, the whale, the orca, whatever you want to call it. And everybody else is just there. I mean, they're just hired extras. You know, nobody has any connection that you want to grab onto. There's what's her name? Rachel, the marine biologist that ends up, I guess there's sort of a love interest there by the end of the story or some sort of connection between them. But it's never fleshed out. Like you never really feel like there's a true connection.
Right.
And so there's the reason why she decides to follow him basically to his death out into the polar ice caps to fight this orca for the last time. It doesn't make any sense. Like, why would she go with him to those extremes when basically from the very beginning they were coming from two very different sides of the argument? Like he wants to capture this orca. He's going to make a boatload of money by selling it into captivity. It's an amazing creature. And she's like the orca specialist, the researcher who loves this creature and understands it. And okay, I get it. Like maybe that's a Romeo and Juliet thing, but they never pull it together. Like it's just like, meh, like I don't understand why in the world she dressed up in her Star Wars costume and followed him to the polar ice caps. That doesn't make any sense to me. And then you have the priest character, which he's really just a side bit. He's there so that, our main character can flesh out his emotional past and we understand more about him, but that's really it.
And he says something too that really doesn't make sense. He basically, because he asks, can you sin against an animal?
Right.
He says, well, all sins that we commit are really against ourselves.
Oh, that's right.
I was like what? No.
No, you can definitely sin against
somebody comes in my house and
people.
steals my stuff or kills somebody. Like they've sinned against me.
Yeah, exactly. And we have sinned against other people and our bad attitudes, our actions, or flicking somebody off in traffic, whatever, Like,
yeah.
Like it just was like spiritual mumbo jumbo. Like what? That doesn't even make any logical sense.
Yeah.
And then there's another kind of sort of spiritual person in the movie. He's like our Inuit or our Native American type personality. Umlak, I think, or Umalak is his name.
Jacob,
Yeah, Jacob in the movie. And it's like they were just like, oh, let's make sure there's a spiritual component. Let's make sure there's like a Native American connection.
The wise man.
The wise sage. We've got a sage in there. Let's make sure we've got the female scientist, marine biologist in there. But they never gave those people time or story to be real humans in the story. It was just very like, we sprinkled in some extraneous characters. Do with them what you may.
And he decides to go on the hunting expedition with them.
Yeah. So how in the world did the sage native And the marine biologists end up on this death trip to
Yeah.
hunt down the orca, which really, it wasn't even a hunting down of the orca. It was Richard Harris going out to redeem himself, knowing he's going to die at the hands of this orca. Fins of this orca.
Yeah, literally his fin.
Yeah, the
threw him out
fins of the orca. So I don't.
And
There
they
was
did
just
something
no
else.
reason for any of that.
Yeah, it was real questionable because Jacob was kind of sticking up for the captain the previous night.
Yeah.
Towards the guy that was like trying to figure out, should I put the boat in the water, the dinghy, I guess?
Yeah.
Or should I leave it up here? And the very next morning, Jacob turns against the captain and pulls a gun on him.
Yeah.
Says it's time to go home. Like, it really didn't make any
No,
sense.
and you're like, wait, what?
They didn't set that up at all.
Wasn't he just trying to help the captain out the night before? I don't get
Yeah.
it. Like, yeah, it was a lot of misdirection, and it almost felt like there were multiple writers on the script or something.
Yeah.
And everybody got their turn to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, or there's another 30 minutes missing.
Yeah, maybe
where
some
they
scenes got cut and we're like, huh, that didn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I felt like that was a major setback for the plot, the storyline, all of it.
Agreed. And, I'll throw one more out there. I know Ennio Morricone is a legend with film scores. He's
Sure.
won Oscars. He did the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Right, everybody knows
The
that.
Thing. He's done several scores, but this one is just not very good.
Yeah.
I know he probably didn't write these songs, but the beginning song that's during kind of the whale romantic segment, super cheesy, really bad.
Yeah.
And when the movie ends and the male orca's swimming off, this really awful song plays.
Oh, yeah. Some woman, like, shrieky vibrato.
Oh, it's so terrible.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's like, how do you end your movie with that, expecting people to walk away feeling good about what they saw?
Feeling what? I don't understand what emotion you're trying to convey when that song starts playing. We've seen Richard Harris die. The whale floats away kind of in the emptiness of his sad life.
Yes.
And then we've got like budget.
Shirley Bassey.
Yeah. I was like, what is this?
Yeah. During the movie, I thought it was okay. We had just seen on TV yesterday riff tracks making fun of Kingdom of the Spiders.
Oh, gosh.
And a lot of the music sounded very similar to what we heard in
Yes.
this movie. Like just kind of this discordant noises that are unsettling. They kind of
Right.
fit the mood. But it's standard 1970s horror stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Again, the beginning and the end, I think those songs really hurt this film.
Yeah. And that's not what, I mean, that's your sandwich right there. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to start bad and end bad. That's rough.
Something new we started this year was a segment where we talk about our favorite scene. Mm-hmm. So what was your favorite scene from this film?
Okay, so it's not a favorite scene because it's beautiful or triumphal or something like that. My favorite scene is probably the zoom in on the eye of the orca. And of course, it was right after the very tragic scene of like his mate dying and the baby being lost. Like that was awful. So I'm not claiming that as a favorite scene, but right after, your heart's a little broken and you're thinking, oh, I don't know if I can handle this movie. And then they do this zoom in, slow pan zoom in to the dad orca's eyeball where he's like taking a picture basically of Captain Nolan. Like he's ingraining his image into his memory.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of funny. It took me out of the moment for sure, the tragic moment. And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, the orca's having a moment where he's like, I see you, I know who you are, and I'm coming for you.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's my favorite scene, just because it's a little bit silly.
Well, the whole death scene is the most memorable scene.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think when they finished all that off with the scene you're talking about, it turned it okay. They went in a different direction.
Right.
Here.
It was like, we had to make this so tragic and terrible because now this orca's got a reason to tear some junk up.
Yeah.
You know?
So my favorite scene, well, there's a couple here that are in contention. But I would say probably the final showdown between the captain and the orca.
Okay.
The orca's pushing that iceberg towards the boat, and they kind of duke it out till the very end. I thought it was kind of exciting.
Yeah.
This was your payoff, basically.
Right. I mean, that's what the whole movie was building towards, right?
Yeah.
So
I thought they handled the death of the captain pretty well. Like, he didn't get bitten in half, or it wasn't like just torture.
Honestly, I was waiting for that. Like, I kept thinking, like, any minute now, like, this Orca's going to treat him like a rag doll. You know? I mean, honestly, we have actual footage of orcas doing that to trainers at SeaWorld, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I was expecting. Of course, this predated all of the SeaWorld debacle. But
yeah.
I was kind of thankful when it didn't end like that. It was,
yeah. I thought it was respectful. It was like mano y mano. And I slung your body across the iceberg, or into the iceberg, and broke your body.
Right.
Dead on impact. And we fell back into the water. He didn't go just chow down on him.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, he looks at Charlotte, Rampling's character, Rachel, kind of looks at her, and I guess he's trying to figure out, well, I'm going to kill you or not. And
right.
Maybe, I think it was a moment where he's saying, you know, I took from you what he took from me. Now I'm out of here.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think he could read into that.
I was more invested in the orcas' relationship as a couple, though, than I was in the marine biologist and the captain's relationship as a couple. But
sure,
I guess it was supposed to be a tit for tat thing.
Yeah, maybe the orca doesn't have that intel, though. Right?
That's true. What does the orca know about their relationship? We barely have anything on their relationship.
Yeah, he made assumptions, I guess.
Yeah, jumped to some conclusions there.
Now is the time where we say yay or nay to this film. What say ye, Kim?
Well, I think I've done this in past seasons. I'm going to give it a meh. Can I land in the middle here?
Sure.
I'm not, obviously it's not an exuberant, yay, I definitely will watch this again, this is fun, or nostalgic, or whatever. Like, it's not that for me. I didn't watch it as a kid. I don't have any emotional ties to it. But it's not a don't go see this. I'm not telling anyone, don't watch it. It's going to,
Right.
cause you strife or nightmares or ruin your life or anything like that. So I'm squarely in the middle with meh. You can watch it or not watch it. And I know we mentioned earlier the Rotten Tomatoes score was like a 9% or a 33%. That's pretty harsh. I think you saw on IMDb, wasn't it more like a 5.4 out of 10 or something like that?
Yeah, on IMDb, yep.
I'd say that's fair. You can watch it or not watch it.
Yep. And I think I'm right there with you, actually. I think of IMDb 5.4 out of 10. That sounds about right for this movie to me. I'll go ahead and give it a yay, though. When I think of this genre of film, which is kind of an animal attack film, there's way worse ones out there than this. This one's actually pretty good comparatively. You look at the Sci-Fi Channel movies. I look at them like we watched one. It was Arachnoquake. Me and our youngest. Yeah, like there would be these earthquakes.
This is what happens when I go to bed early at night.
And gigantic spiders show up, and it's about the kills. It's about the gross out moments.
Right.
There's a lot of comedy going on.
Yeah.
Like it's for laughs.
Yeah.
And I look at those as like the 2 out of 10 or whatever you said, 9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. It's good for a few laughs, but it's not trying to do anything. On the opposite end of the spectrum, and I know we're going to rate Jaws at some point, but I'll tell you, Jaws is on the other end of the spectrum.
Right, exactly.
This isn't original to me, but Jaws isn't about the fish.
Right, yeah.
It's about those things that you talked about, the character development, your investment in these characters, the townspeople, the relationships that are happening, and you get pulled into those relationships, and you become concerned when people are in jeopardy.
Right.
And then that final scene, that last third of Jaws, you care about these 3 dudes, and maybe you didn't even care about the captain until they're sitting around drinking and sharing, scar stories, how you got this, how you got that.
Cold, lifeless eyes.
Yeah, so when they do battle with the shark, there is great peril, and you feel something.
You feel something.
All 3 of these guys.
Exactly.
Whereas in this movie, the people that the shark is picking off, I said shark again, the killer whale, when the orca is picking off these people one by one, there's a missed opportunity. You think of Captain Nolan's kind of his mentor figure, Novak. He's picked off first.
Oh, that's right. We lost him in the opening of the movie, right?
Yeah. And we don't even realize what that guy meant to him until he's talking to the priest. He's explaining, my dad left me this boat, he left me the mortgage, and he left me Novak.
Right. And we're like, wait, he's already dead.
He's already dead. So, like, you killed off somebody. There could have been a story there where we see, there's this relationship that this guy cares about.
Right.
And because I care about him, I now care about Novak. But I don't care about Novak because Novak got eaten in the first 10 minutes of the movie.
All of those little characters that we have investment in Jaws, they tried to put all of that on Captain Nolan's character in this movie.
Yeah.
And he just can't carry it. One dude in this movie, in this film with this plot and this writing, just can't pull it off.
Yeah. If you look at this movie more like Moby Dick, then I think it does make more sense and you can kind of buy into it more.
Sure.
So if you've read the novel Moby Dick or you saw the Gregory Peck version of the movie, you see a guy with a lust for revenge.
Yeah.
And you see like Tyrant 1 against Tyrant 2.
Yeah.
And they kind of undo each other, right? They
absolutely do. Okay, but let's go back to Research Corner for a minute there. Mm-hmm. The way Moby Dick gets it right is because the human feels thwarted and has the revenge instinct. The white whale, is doing what a white whale does and trying to preserve its own life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I feel like there's more of a buy-in there already because it follows the laws of nature and you're like, yes. Yeah. Like this human has these instincts, this whale has these instincts.
Right.
And it makes sense. Whereas this is again, we're trying to like anthropomorphize an orca into having human emotions about a situation. Right. Which I get it. It's an interesting idea for a story. It didn't play out well.
It needs another element, something that would explain why they've evolved this way.
Yeah.
Some chemical in the ocean that's made it more sentient or something.
I don't know. Now you're going sci-fi on me.
But I will say, Moby Dick, though, this whale doesn't just go out living its life. Like, it's attacking ships. It's destroying things.
Well, that's true. Maybe that's what these orcas are working up to off of the Iberian Peninsula right now.
Maybe.
We'll have to follow that story. Hey, you heard it here first, folks. We will update you as we follow the orca story. Yeah. The real-life orca story.
Oh. Okay, so we do have some comments on our social media about this film.
Excellent.
We have Jay Edwards, 1970. He says, this was a great movie. And there's a popcorn emoji.
Oh, okay.
So when I posted this, I said that I think it's funny that the tagline is Jaws with heart, because I think the opposite is true. It is Jaws with the disposable characters. Still a fun watch. So that's what I posted when I posted this picture.
Sure.
And Neil B. Forzode said, I guess the with heart comment is about how the film desperately tries to get you to feel sorry for the whale, whereas Jaws doesn't care about your stupid feelings. They definitely wanted you to cry when his big monsters die. And they gave the example of King Kong.
Oh.
So Barlow's Boutique says, love it. It was an event every year in our house growing up, like Jaws or The Wizard of Oz. Haha. The scene where he bites off Bo Derek's leg always scared me.
I, too, do not want my leg bitten off by a giant aquatic mammal. Or anything, really.
So what are we going to watch for our next episode?
All right, so as we mentioned earlier, we are in our Summer Swim series where we're dealing with movies that have terrors from the deep.
Yes.
Yes. So our next movie, we're going to deal with an animal that's a little closer to home for us. Alligator.
Oh, yes.
We have lots of those around here.
We do.
But this alligator lives up in like Chicago, which I don't think they actually have alligators in Chicago. So that'll be interesting. So yeah, 1980s alligator. Apparently little baby Ramon, the alligator, gets flushed down a toilet when he's very small, but he doesn't stay small. He's living in the sewers of Chicago, eating things that maybe he shouldn't be eating, and growing to terrifying size and scariness.
That's right. That's right. It's available for streaming on Amazon, I looked, and it's also on Shudder TV and AMC Plus.
Nice. Okay. Lots of places to watch it.
So that does it for us.
That's right. You've got 2 weeks to watch Alligator and join us back here.
Happy movie watching.
Enjoy your movies, guys. Peace out.
Peace out.